I haven't had a chance to touch on this, and this to me, it's actually quite a nice thing to read, and it. I'll read it for you here. It's with regards Kevin Mitchell, the former lightweight contender, lightweight world challenger. I remember Kevin Mitchell actually. I remember his fight with Jorge Linares. I think that was on the undercard of Kell Brook versus Frankie Gavin, I think it was. I think Anthony Joshua and Lee Selby fought on that card, if I'm not mistaken. And I also remember him fighting on the undercard of Anthony Joshua versus Dylan White. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that might have been his last fight. He got stopped in a couple of rounds. I think it was 4 or 5 rounds by. Well, he still looked old at the time, but he was younger. When I say younger, I say that in inverted commas about this fighter, Ishmael Barroso, because even then he looked an old man. And that's nearly a decade ago. Kevin Mitchell. Kevin Mitchell was always a fun fighter. He was always entertaining. He was always in good fights. I remember against Linares, he dropped Linares, I think, in that fight. And I think it was a bad swelling or something that was on his face. But I'll read this here. Kevin Mitchell, former world title challenger, has revealed that Anthony Joshua paid for his brother's funeral after his brother tragically passed away in a motorcycle accident at age just 31. He said here, and I quote, "He called me and said, 'Is your mum there? Can I speak with her, please? We're all worried about burying my brother. How will we get the money? We've got mortgage to pay and no one's working.' I was stressed, under a lot of pressure. He went, 'Alice, do you mind if I get it?' My mum didn't quite hear him. He went, 'I'm going to pay for his funeral, Alice, if you don't mind.' And he paid for it." Now, I'm not sure when that was, Kevin Mitchell's brother passing away. Was it recent or whenever? But that's the first we've heard of that. And that to me is just tip my hat off to him. Absolutely. Anthony Joshua is someone who, I've always said this. It's weird because when Anthony Joshua in his career as a fighter, I felt that very early on he was praised a little bit too much for not really doing necessarily that much. And what I mean by that is that I remember when he beat Charles Martin. I know a lot of like websites like Sky and people like that were like, "Well, it took Ali the same amount of fights," and you're like, you can't compare that to Anthony Joshua. No offense, you just can't do it. Charles Martin is not Sonny Liston. There was only one title or maybe two titles back then. It might have been the WBC, WBA, but either way, there wasn't what we have now. So you can't compare that. But then he went on to beat Klitschko, Joseph Parker, fights with Andy Ruiz, Usyk, etc. Built up a brilliant resume, tried to fight everyone he could, tried to unify at every available opportunity. He wasn't good enough to be the best of this generation, of this era. He wasn't good enough to become undisputed. It happens, but in an era where you're fighting the likes of Alexander Usyk, I mean, Alexander Usyk is an all-time great, tremendous fighter. It's hard to fight the best when you're pretty much being frozen out by Fury and Usyk for 3 years. It's very difficult. You do what you can. You fight your contemporaries. You get beat. It happens. You know, you try and avenge them, which Anthony Joshua did and may very well try and do again with Daniel Dubois. Didn't work. Some cases it did with Andy Ruiz. Some cases it doesn't. Since then, it just seems like the criticism for Joshua in his career has been, massive. But when you read things like that, and you see and you hear contemporaries from other people, not just Kevin Mitchell, on what he's done outside of the ring for other people, irrespective of their background or anything else, you can't not respect the man. Anthony Joshua, and I've heard several people say this, not even, at particular isolated events, but Anthony Joshua has done meet and greets in events, in London and things like that, gone to businesses. And people have said that actually the people who brought Anthony Joshua there, I don't want to say the handlers, but you know what I mean, like, kind of his team, his PR team have been saying, we got to get going. He would make sure, and I've heard this from several different people, to shake the hand and anyone who wanted to meet him, he would meet them. Even if he was only booked to be there for an hour, he'd be there longer, making sure everyone, who wanted to meet him would meet him. When he's at these events like Daniel Dubois, the weigh-in and stuff like that, whether it's in Trafalgar Square, I think, it was in Trafalgar Square, when he's done some weigh-ins in Shepherd's Bush, Westfield. I mean, he's turned that into, a spectacle for people. He's met some of his fans and stuff like that, and it shows he's approachable, which is nice. And to do stuff like that, and crucially to do something like that for Kevin Mitchell when, obviously, times are tough for some people, finances are, Kevin Mitchell, even though he had a decent career as a fighter, I can't imagine he made millions and millions of life-changing sums of money, so he's doing whatever he can to get by. The funerals certainly are not cheap. For Anthony Joshua, out of the kindness of his heart, to go and do that, and to ask permission first, which is crucial. He didn't just go in and say, I'm going to do it, and blab about it or anything like that. For him to do that, and to just let it, just leave, it's done. He's not looked for praise, he's not looked for validation or anything like that. That to me says a lot about his character. Now I know people will say that they feel, oh, but Anthony Joshua is fake. Well, fake to what end? Do I believe this whole stay humble, get to bed early, eat your veg, and all that kind of stuff? Do I believe that that is the true Anthony Joshua? No. Well, that's for PR. But do I believe Anthony Joshua is a bad person? That's certainly not. Do I think that Anthony Joshua has a mean streak in him? Certainly in terms of fighting in the boxing ring, of course. He needs it. And you can see that in him. He has that mean streak. He needs that mean streak. We've seen it come out a few times. He's needed that throughout the course of his career in order to get to where he is. If he was just to stay humble, I'm just happy to be here, he probably would have still beaten Charles Martin, but he never would have come through the Klitschko fight. He never would have been able to achieve a fraction of what he's achieved if he didn't have that mean streak, that cockiness, that arrogance in him. Is the whole stay humble, all that, is that really Anthony Joshua? No, of course not. I've never felt that. I've always felt that it's corny, it's fake. It's been good for him in terms of finance, it's given him all these sponsors and stuff like that. It's been brilliant in that sense. But do I feel that that's the real him? No, certainly not. But do I think Anthony Joshua fundamentally is a bad human being? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And you hear stories like that. You see what he's done for people like Kevin Mitchell and something like that, which he didn't have to do it. He didn't look for, he didn't, do it and then be singing it from the rafters. Look what I did, aren't I great? You always see people who, their actions that they'll do, I'll talk about fighters just in general, you'll see people who will do things for charities. They'll do, they'll oh, look, I bought these all dinners, and the first thing they're doing is they're just bragging about, look what I did, look at, aren't I great, and then you see them in other scenarios where, maybe the cameras are not on them or they don't get validation. Someone who's really in trouble needs help. F them. Who are they? F them. Well, what do you mean F them? You went from, oh, I look after everyone, to F them. Oh, what, because there's no cameras on you? Is that why you're not doing it? Oh, so you can't, virtue signal on social media? Is that why all of a sudden now you don't care? You'd be surprised. That's what a lot of it is. With Anthony Joshua, he's not seeking validation. And that's why I say that when people, and again, people are going to say, you're having a go with Tyson Fury. Well, listen, Tyson Fury is the sort of guy who brags about giving, or at least did brag about giving his purse from the first Wilder fight to charity. Did he do that? No. It's not the fact that he didn't do it. Look, I don't care. It's his money. He's entitled to do what he wants. But why in God's name would you go around and, act, look how good I am, look how humble I am, I don't need the money and all this, that and the other, then not do it. To also have such contempt for fans and say, well, it's not about the money and, I don't care about the money, blah, 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 blah. To say in True Geordie interview he gave a couple of years ago that it is about the money, to charge a record UK pay-per-view price for Derek Chisora at 3, which nobody asked for and nobody wanted, and it was a terrible undercard apart from Dubois versus Lorena, which shouldn't have been that good, but it ended up being it. To charge UK record pay-per-view price, to then say you're a man of the people, to make these claims that, people come to my door and I go for runs with them and I do this, that and the other, okay, anything to back that up? No. And then you contrast that to Anthony Joshua, who people critique no end. And listen, I've critiqued Anthony Joshua plenty on here. I've no doubt I'll critique him again. I probably would critique him if he went straight back into a Daniel Dubois rematch, because I'd say, well, why are you doing that? Why aren't you just looking, why aren't you thinking long term about your health? Why aren't you thinking about long term, is this the right thing? Should I not be fighting someone who's more my level? I critiqued him after the performance against Daniel Dubois, I thought, good lord, he was the crap beaten out of him. But that's in a boxing sense. In terms of him as a person, do I think, look, I could get on with Tyson. If I met Tyson Fury, I don't know, I might get on with him. I might actually meet Joshua and Fury at some point in my life and find that I actually get on better with Tyson Fury as a person than I would Anthony Joshua. But just from what we see, the little snippets of them we see, online in their everyday life, some of the actions that they've done, actions speak a lot louder than words. It's one thing to say you will give all your money to this charity and then not do it. It's another thing to do it and then not look for any validation at all, which is what Anthony Joshua has done. So I give him the massive amount of credit, massive amount of respect. The true people's champ in the UK, Anthony Joshua, with that. Kevin Mitchell, great fighter in his day. He's never world level, but he was entertaining. I enjoyed Kevin Mitchell. he is a little bit on the punchy side these days. I mean, he's not that bad, but he's not as clear as he used to be back in the day when he was a lot younger and fresher. But you know, going through a time like that, and Anthony Joshua comes in, asks permission, can I pay for it, and then does, no questions asked. Well done, credit to him. Anyway, people, I'll leave it there. Just wanted to give my 2 cents on it, because when I read that, I was thinking, you know what? That's a proper bloke. That's what you call a proper bloke. That's a good thing to do. Credit to him. I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts. Hope you enjoyed it. All the best. Smash the like button. Peace.